Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the May 8th committee meetings of the Bellingham City Council. Just to let people know, when the agenda first went out, we accidentally omitted one of the committees, Community Economic Development. We then resent out the notification, but lets you know that committee will be meeting and have one item this afternoon. But we'll go to our first committee, which is Public Works and Public Safety, which is chaired by Councilor Terry Borneman.
Thank you, Michael. Joining me on the committee is Gene Knutson and Roxanne Murphy. We have 4 items before us today. The first is a resolution for job order contracting process. Ted?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Ted Carlson, Public Works Department. At your last meeting on April 24th, we introduced this topic. This is an alternative project delivery model for when we do public works projects in the city of Bellingham. We traditionally do a design, bid, build project or process, which is very effective for most of the projects that we do. However, sometimes with smaller projects, it's a bit onerous, cumbersome, and not as efficient as the process that we're bringing forward today, which is called job order contracting. We spent quite a bit of time at the last work session talking about exactly what that is, and the memo in your packet, I think, does a nice job of summarizing the process as laid out in state law, which essentially allows the city to enter into a contract with a job order contractor, essentially acts as a general contractor. The city negotiates a series of unit prices for many of the things that we do with that contractor. Then when the time comes for us to do smaller projects, repairs to facilities is an example of one that works very well. We've already have a contractor in place, we have prices in place, and then that contractor subs the work out to local contractors that specialize in individual trades. State law requires that the job order contractor can only do 10% of the total project value, so 90% of the work is contracted out to subcontractors, which works well for the local contracting community. As I mentioned, it was just an introduction at the last meeting. There were a handful of questions that we addressed, and one of them had to do with the project limits as identified in state law. The state law lays out the process that's available to certain cities. Bellingham qualifies due to our size, and it puts the project dollar limits at $350,000 for an individual project. And Council President Lillquist asked whether or not there was some flexibility on that number, and could we perhaps reduce that number so that there may be more oversight for some of the projects that were getting up towards that threshold. And we had a conversation about that. I followed up and spoke a little bit more with City Attorney's Office on that. Staff recommends we stay with what's outlined in state process, and there's a few reasons for that. One, it lines up well with the process we already use for traditional bidding, which is a small works roster. We can award projects up to $350,000 using a small works process where we just call contractors on a roster, get three bids from them without going through the formal bidding process. It's a version of a streamlined bidding process for smaller projects, and they set that threshold at $350,000. So this would be in line with that, and we think that makes a lot of sense. And secondly, if we were to in any way modify the process that's already in state law, we would have to develop our own code rather than just referring to RCW and following the state law. We would have to, in essence, write our own section of the code. So for those reasons, we recommend keeping it the way it is and following the rules and laws laid out in state law. We think that works well. And then we spoke a little bit earlier about the impact on local contractors, and I think we addressed the concerns, but we're happy to answer any other questions that you may have. But today we are requesting action in the form of a resolution that would authorize staff to utilize this process.
Okay. Roxanne?
I just support this completely, so I would move that we pass the resolution for job order contracting process.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments by committee? Council? Yes, April.
So during the last presentation, as well as in your statement, you've suggested that this will encourage local contracting. How are we certain? And what is I think the gentleman that, I can't remember his name, that presented to us last time had mentioned that there is some oversight that if that fairness, if that equitability isn't, but how does somebody complain about that? Is that kind of written into it? And then how do we ensure the local?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways that I think it might benefit the local contracting community. One of those is that the job order contractor will be the one responsible for carrying all the insurance and bonding that the city requires. Currently, when we go out for smaller projects, we don't oftentimes get a lot of bidders because our process individually can be a bit onerous for smaller contractors that may not carry the general liability that we require. So they have to go out and get special insurance coverage for our projects or bonding because we tend to require higher levels than they may carry on their own. Under this process, the JOC, the job order contractor, carries all those limits. So the subcontractor's relationship is with the general contractor. They don't need to worry about our process. The JOC handles that. So I think that may encourage smaller businesses to engage in opportunities with the city where they previously may not have. The provisions in state law that say the JOC needs to equitably distribute the work to subcontractors is put in place so that they don't continue to use whoever they're most familiar with or most comfortable with. That oversight is, the guidance is in state law, and the oversight would be on the city to enforce and work through our contractors. So if there were contractors that felt like that was not being followed, their remedy would be to contact the city. The city would work with our job order contractor. So the city has the oversight in that regard. I don't know, Matt, if you want to add to that.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will recommend approval tonight. The next up is an update to the water treatment plant dissolved air flotation, the DAF pre-treatment project.
Excellent. Thank you. Again, Ted Carlson, Public Works, along with Chad Schulhauser, Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer. This is a project that Council is obviously very familiar with, but it's a very large project spanning several years. So we thought that it would make sense to periodically check in with Council, just provide some updates, let you know how we're doing, and certainly answer any questions you might have. So we have a very brief presentation that has some pictures of the project up there, and I'll turn it over to Chad to run through that.
Thank you, Chad Schulhauser, Public Works. Like Ted mentioned, this is just a real brief presentation. I expect to be back to you a few more times over the next year and a half or so as this project gets completed. This is our water pretreatment project, also known as the DAF, Dissolved Air Flotation. This is the location on the east side of the current treatment plant out there in Whatcom Falls Park. We've got quite a few park and public impacts, obviously. The parking and staging for the contractor is all taking place at the east end of Arbor Court. We've got some flow-over parking on Silver Beach Road for the subcontractors. We have closed down the trail, so we've got a trail detour, but we're trying to keep that connectivity while the project is going on. Schedule-wise, we issued a notice to proceed in October. We spent this winter performing some site control and tree removal. There were 10 large conifers that needed to come out, and site control, we've actually got 24-hour video cameras up there now, as well as the site is all fenced for security reasons. We spent this last spring with some excavation, electrical site work, and getting ready for slab construction. I'll show you some pictures of that, and we can talk about that. All this is in anticipation of an October 2018 commissioning and completion of the project. So one of the neat things is we've got Harris and CH2M, our inspectors, working with the city on this. Harris, actually, their inspector sets up a camera from the same position every day, so we've got kind of a time lapse of this. This is before work really got started back in December, before the tree removal took place. And as we go through this, you'll see in the next slide, there behind the fence is where the new facility is going to go. The trees have been removed. We've got about a 12-foot excavation to get the foundations in up there on the hillside. Cutting out the hillside, really the only way you're going to be able to see from this angle is that 12-foot excavation is you'll start seeing the lowering of the excavators. Just kind of something neat to geek out on. You can see the excavator starting to get lower there as we go through the months. Snow's gone, obviously, and trees, like I said, were already removed. Now this month, just at the beginning of this month, we basically have kind of stabilized the slope hillside and are getting ready to put in the foundation pour. As they were excavating, here's a nice large boulder that they were hitting, a lot of glacial till out there, a lot of rocks, a lot of material that I'll talk about in a few minutes. They were, like I said, this is about a 12-foot excavation, getting ready for the foundations. In order to do that, they're laying down some barrier and then bringing in some quarry spalls and other gravel material to form that base. Here's kind of a relative, the slope is stabilized, and you can kind of see on the hillside slope how deep we had to go to get the foundation ready. This is then putting in the fiber conduit as well as the drain pipes to be prepared to start pouring the footings. We'll be doing that later on this month, getting with the concrete. The dirt that I mentioned before, that's all going off to our cycle track, pump cycle track, up at the north end of the park, at that north parking lot. Here's kind of a map of that layout. Just last week, out there taking some pictures on our one nice day, and you can kind of see what they're doing. They've got that dirt is all being moved around. It's a Parks managed project, but this is all basically volunteer work going on out there, and they're moving along, keeping the site clean and all of that. So it looks like it's going to be a fun facility when they're all said and done. That's really all I had, is just a quick update, some pictures for you. Happy to answer any questions you may have. Project engineer is Freeman Anthony on this. And like I said, we'll be back here a few more times.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, this was for information only. So next up is a bid award for ES-522 12th and Mill intersection improvements, bid 14B-2017.
Thank you very much. This is a bid award for some intersection and pedestrian improvements at Mill and 12th, and on the overhead, we're showing the new alignment, and Chad can kind of walk you through this. We wanted to, rather than just our typical bid award, we did want to show the site layout, because we are making some changes, pretty noticeable changes to the intersection, really intended to improve safety at this location. We had an awkward intersection there near the Fairhaven Library and Finnegan and 12th and Mill, creating some challenging situations. So we partnered with the private developer that's building the Orca building right next to the library to coordinate the pedestrian improvements, so that we had an opportunity to leverage the city's money, which was through both a state grant through the Transportation Improvement Board, TIB, as well as local street fund dollars with the private investment. So Chad will kind of show you what we're proposing here, and then we'll request council award bid.
So to get you oriented, this is the current library parking lot. This is the Orca building on the corner that Ted was mentioning. 12th Street right now comes in kind of a 5-point intersection down there. We're going to clean that up, basically. Sorry. We're going to clean that up by bringing the 12th Street extension down into Finnegan Way right here. Further down at the intersection, we'll also be cleaning that up at Mill Avenue, doing both sides with current ADA ramps, and closing off 12th Street from that intersection, so it'll be more of a standard four-way intersection. We're also providing a wide out on the east side of Finnegan Way, and trying to get some connection. We've spoken with Parks about this. This will actually be an expansion of Veterans Park down there, doing a little bit of grass, a little bit of concrete, and paver work.
So we did go to bid on this, and we're recommending that council award bid to our lowest responsive and responsible bidder, which was Colacurcio Brothers.
Gene?
Yeah, I'll move approval of 2 bids. People must be busy. Is that what it is? I mean, usually a lot more, but I'm sure everybody's okay.
Okay. Any questions? Michael?
I remember in earlier versions of this, when the Orca building that's going in now had angled in parking along kind of where 12th is now. Is there going to be, you have that pull out, is that like 2-3 spaces? I'm just wondering about the impact on parking in the area.
There is diagonal parking along Mill Avenue, but on 12th Avenue, where it was coming in and squaring up to Finnegan Way, that's been closed off now, so there's no parking down there. There are existing 2 ADA stalls. Those are relocated in the library. There are actually current ADA stalls in the library parking lot right now. Those were for the library. So the impact of parking, there were some on-street parking stalls that are removed on 12th Street, but those were so close to the intersection it was pretty minimal.
And then there was a fifth sidewalk that's being removed, and that impacted parking on the other side, on the west side. Is some of that parking, like one spot, being restored?
Actually, we're going to restore, we think possibly 3, but at least 2 spots will be restored. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Yep, April?
Did you say the 2 that were on street were ADA accessible? And that, are you actually replacing those and building 2 more inside the library parking? Or
No.
adding 2 more in the new parking on the other side?
They were ADA marked. I would not consider them ADA accessible because of the way they were. You had to get across the street. There was no accessible route to get up onto the sidewalk and into the library. The library parking lot has 2 ADA stalls in it right now that does have a pedestrian accessible route into the library.
Okay, but you're not making, on the other side, you're not adding any ADA accessible?
No, we don't provide typically on-street ADA parking.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Roxanne?
I just really wanted to thank the department for always looking to create safer streets and intersections. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
No, we're just having a cell phone faux pas. Does anybody know whose cell phone? Is it somewhere else? Sorry, we're just having a lot of buzzing
Can't hear
happening
it.
behind our heads, so if we look a little, that's all that's happening.
Okay, we have a motion before us. All those in favor of the motion, answer aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will recommend approval tonight. The last item is a bid award for East North Street, EV-125, and East Oregon Street, EV-139, phosphorus reduction retrofit bid, 7B 2017.
Excellent, thank you. Again, we're requesting council award bid. These are 2 phosphorus reduction projects in the Lake Whatcom watershed that are funded through both the Department of Ecology grant and the city's watershed money, which is from the water fund and the surcharge that folks pay on a monthly basis. Both these projects will be a combination of infiltration and vault and filter facilities that were designed to give us the best phosphorus reduction at these 2 locations. Chad certainly answer any questions that you might have about the projects, but our recommendation is to award bid.
Okay. Gene?
Move approval.
Yep. Okay, any other comment? Michael?
In our packet, which is in black and white, the city limits are marked in like some pale color I can't see. How close is the city limits? It seems like it's right next to the city limits.
So the city limits are right at the end of North Street. So it's basically right there, like a block.
Oh, it might be this dash line.
Where that street ends, where the street ends.
Okay. Is there any interest in the county in extending this across the
We've actually
Fine.
had conversations with the county. I think, you want to talk to Larry? We basically did talk with them because certainly on the Oregon portion, we're taking a certain amount of their basin. So we've approached them about wanting to participate in this. At this point in time, their stormwater funding is as strapped as ours. So they have not shown any
could it
interest.
be scaled in the future? I mean, I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but if they wanted to do a nearby project, would they interfere or cooperate?
Well, we're taking their basin that comes in to this portion, so that would be a separate basin. That wouldn't really scale this project up.
Okay, we have a motion before us. All those in favor, answer aye.
Aye.
Right. Okay. And so, Ted, I believe you have an update on the broken pipe at the wastewater treatment.
Yes,
plant.
absolutely. Thank you. Again, Ted Carlson, Public Works Department, and Eric Johnston, Assistant Public Works Director at Operations, is going to join me here. I think as council is aware, we did have an incident at Post Point over the weekend, early Saturday morning. We wanted to take the opportunity to update council on what happened, what we know that happened, how we've responded, and what the plan is moving forward. So we had a good response. The staff on site were able to quickly respond to this incident, and Eric will pull up some pictures that'll help orient you to what happened. But essentially, we had a very large 30-inch diameter pipe fail. The pipe's located within the pipe gallery, so underneath Post Point. And when that failed, it filled up the gallery with sewage. And we have quite a bit of instrumentation and controls in the pipe gallery, pumps and other sensitive equipment down there, so much of that was flooded. And so we went through the process to assess that, what's functioning, what's not, and start the repair process. A couple very fortunate things happened. One, as I mentioned, our operator was very, very quick to respond, had to go into the pipe gallery and shut down some valves, and was very quick to do that, and that limited the amount of water that drained out of our secondary clarifiers. It could have been much, much worse. They responded quickly to the alarm, knew exactly where to go, and shut down the valves to limit the flooding. And that helped us tremendously as we were able to maintain our primary treatment throughout the whole process, as well as our disinfectant. So the takeaway from this is that we were always treating to a basic level of treatment. We were always disinfecting, adding chlorine before discharging to the bay. We were quick to respond and notify all of our regulatory agencies, so Department of Health, Department of Ecology. We have some responsibilities to Clean Air and EPA, so all of our permit regulators were notified. And then we started the process of going through and evaluating exactly what has been damaged and what the process will be to move forward to get us back to secondary treatment, which is what we're attempting to do as quickly as possible. So it looks like Eric's got it pulled up. What you're seeing there, actually, I'll turn it over to Eric, and he can kind of walk through the slide and where we're at now.
Thanks, Ted. I appreciate that. Eric Johnston, Public Works. Before I get into the slides, just want to make some recognition to the staff who really did exceptional work over this last weekend. Two people in particular, if I could single them out, Carl Lowry, who's our plant operator, and two of his operators, actually, Gary Gilfillan and Mark Bastiedenbeck, were on duty that night about 1:30 in the morning. We became apparent there was a problem. They quickly identified that there was water where it shouldn't be, and some very astute decision-making shut down the necessary features as quickly as they were able to, which preserved operationally, gives us the ability to do what we're doing today. So really hands off to the professionalism and leadership of those individuals who were on duty that night. So this, just a couple of quick photographs here. What happened was that there was a pipeline that connects the end of the secondary system back to the beginning of the secondary system. So it's a technical term, we call it return activated sludge, and it moves a portion of that wastewater system back to the beginning, which helps the biology of the system function and keep up and running. So when that pipeline failed that connects the end of the plant to the beginning of the plant, that comes offline. The primary systems are still operational. So the first step in the treatment process is still up and functioning. The disinfection systems, the solids handling, the incinerators are all functioning. What's not functioning is that secondary process. That pipeline that connects the end of the clarifiers, the end of the process, to the beginning of the process, the aerators. I recall with the last upgrade we did a lot of work on the aerators. This is that same process. That pipeline connects those two big tanks underground through the galleries and the tunnels. And so when that pipe ruptured, all the water filled the galleries. And so the pictures that we have up here on the screen show the water about 10 hours after the rupture occurred, after it's been pumped down several feet. So we had about 3.5 to 4 feet of water in those galleries. It got into a fair amount of the equipment, some of the electrical panels which were lower on the ground, many of the pumps and the motors which were lower onto the surface were affected by that. So you can see the bottom of the stairwell here. There's a step ladder, a couple of feet up on that step ladder. Again, some more pictures. You can see the high water mark on the wall here. So here again, here's the high water mark, a couple of feet up. So a fair amount of equipment, pumps and things that were on the ground that were inundated and flooded. Thankfully, many of the electrical controls, the control systems were higher above that, so a lot of those were unaffected in the short term here. This is the pipe that broke. In technical terms, it fell off the ceiling. We're still assessing what caused that failure, and that'll take some time to sort through, but we are interested in making sure that this does not happen again, obviously. And here's some more pictures of that same gallery. You can see there's the high water mark on the wall. You can see Carl Lowry in the background there. It's about to his hip level. So when that pipe falls off of the ceiling and becomes disconnected, that water filled up that gallery fairly quickly. This is a picture that was taken Sunday morning at 8 a.m. After the crews have pumped all the wastewater out and started cleaning. They did a fabulous job. That water you can't tell that it was really there as of today. So just a couple of quick slides on that. This is that same shot of that same gallery. There's no water on the floor. The very shiny floors that you see in Post Point are still shiny, and all of that wastewater has been removed for the most part. Again, just another picture of that gallery with that water being gone. Again, there's the high water mark and some nice clean floors. So where are we at right now? We're continuing to operate in primary mode. We have full disinfection. We're treating it as best as we can. Just to comparison, primary treatment versus secondary. Primary is a mechanical process. By and large part, we're removing by gravity and sedimentation and just slow moving water, sediment and some biological matter. The secondary process is a biological process, and so we've lost the biological process. So the next kind of three tracks that we're taking is today and yesterday are working towards a temporary bypass, a means to very quickly move the water through the secondary system, bring that secondary system online. The second track that we're looking into now is making sure that the biology associated with the secondary process, all those bacteria that consume the organic matter in our wastewater, are healthy and happy and will be alive when we turn the secondary system back online. We want to make sure that's going to function pretty quickly once we turn the pipes on, that system doesn't take a long time to get started back up again. And then the third track is to make sure that we do a very thorough assessment of what happened, what the root cause of failure was, and design a solution that will be long-term and not have this problem again. We have no doubt that we'll be able to do that relatively quickly, but it's going to take us some time to get into and truly assess what that caused and come up with a long-term solution. But we have full confidence in being able to be activated back into the secondary process in short order. We'll know more in the next day or two as to what that timeline is going to take.
So we're certainly happy to answer any questions you may have. I will be coming back to council at your next council meeting to ask for an emergency proclamation. Obviously, we've had to move forward with some contracting. We've had private contractors on there along with our staff and didn't necessarily have the time to follow our typical bidding process for that. So we've been down this road recently where we asked council for a resolution, and we can do that after the fact. So we'll be coming back at your next meeting. We'll continue to work with Department of Ecology, who's our primary oversight at the treatment facility. They've been on site, or they will be here shortly. They were notified, as I mentioned, right away. So, again, it could have been much, much worse if not for some of the staff and their quick response. And we will be working diligently to, as Eric said, identify what the cause was, and certainly as we move forward for the permanent repair, take all of that into consideration, working with our engineers to make sure we design something that doesn't have this happen again.
Good. I hope you'll pass on our best wishes for the staff and thank them for getting on that quick and doing such a great job of moving on it quickly, because that's
Absolutely.
really important. Questions, anyone? Roxanne?
I, too, just wanted to thank the staff for the responsiveness, but also I'm so relieved that everyone's safe. And I thank you for assuring the safety of our community and the environment.
Thank you.
April?
When the sludge fills the gallery and you pump it out, where do you pump it to? Are you able to pump it back in so it can get
Back
treated?
into the primary clarifiers.
Okay.
Yep.
And then all of the people, like the Clean Air Agency and others, do they write a report on this that
They
then we'll
will,
get
so-
some update on what the impacts of this were?
Yeah, absolutely. So our lab supervisor, who is our project manager with reporting at both the water plant and the wastewater treatment plant, she made the initial contact. We'll notify them of all the testing throughout the timeline, work with Clean Air, EPA, Department of Health, Department of Ecology, everyone that has a piece of the oversight will get the reports as we went through the process, and has, as I said, been notified, and we've been in discussions with them. So in terms of clean air, specifically, as Eric mentioned, one of the other things the operators do right away is they shut down the plant. When something like this happens, we've had a flood event, they want to limit the damage. So the incinerators came offline. The incinerators, when we brought them off, they're working as designed. We don't anticipate we had any air quality violations at all. There was one piece of equipment that was damaged in the gallery that has to do with the monitoring of the emissions. And we certainly notified EPA and Clean Air of that. Right now, we don't necessarily have all the data on the emissions themselves, although the system is functioning the way it always has, and historically, we operate far, far below our threshold. We've never been anywhere near our permit, and we don't have any reason to believe that we would be now. But absolutely, there'll be a report going to all the agencies, and we'll take all the feedback from them and act accordingly.
Okay. Anything else? Pinky?
Me too, I want to pass on our thanks. Not only was that an extremely difficult job, it was very unpleasant. And I feel like we should give them some sort of dirty job award or something like that, because it's pretty phenomenal. Their response, what they had to deal with, and the situation itself is pretty extraordinary, and more than just a little thanks guys, I think is in order.
Yeah, thank you. And then it looks like the mayor would like to speak as well. The one thing I would say, and I think it's always worth noting, the folks that operate the plant, they're very, very technical. They're highly technical. And so when you're down there, when I was down there Saturday and Sunday, you definitely get a very strong sense of the professionalism, of the technical expertise. As you know, it's a very, very complex treatment facility, and to know exactly where to go during that type of situation, it was very well done.
Okay. Mayor?
And just so the public knows, that was obviously the first question everyone was asking: is our drinking water, or is our water still safe? And there was a lot of very good communication that came out of the department. I think that's in large part to Amy Cloud, who wasn't actually there, I think, that during that time, but who has set up in the department and with Vanessa the ability to communicate amongst the lead people in the city to make sure the public gets information that they need, mostly that there was no danger to them. And then I also want to thank Eric and Ted, because the training and the design and the upgrades that we're doing now in our facility, if anybody asks you if it's worth the investment, I hope we all tell people, yes, it is, because it's expensive. But when something happens like this in this particular time, the training, the experience, and the system that we have did protect our community. So I want to thank both Eric and Ted for being there and being there every day.
Okay. Anything else? Well, end of committee.